I'm Ed Goetz. I am the director of the Center for Urban and Regional Affairs at the University of Minnesota. It's a research and outreach. Okay, let's start over. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm Ed Goetz. I'm the director of the Center for Urban and Regional Affairs at the University of Minnesota. I'm also a faculty member at the Humphrey School of Public Affairs and a member of the Hennepin-University Partnership Management Team. Cura is a research and outreach arm of the University of Minnesota. We were created years ago to be a sort of liaison between the university and the resources of the university and the community, the urban environment in which we're set. And so we do a lot of work with community groups, governments, neighborhood organizations, and the like. And so an arrangement like the Hennepin-University Partnership is really a natural for Cura because it gets us doing exactly what it is that we were created to do in the first place, and that is to produce and facilitate relationships between faculty and students at the university and the larger community. Cura's mission is to make the resources of the university available to the community of the metropolitan area and the upper Midwest. And so we do that in a number of different ways by connecting faculty members to community groups, by providing learning experiences for students out in the community. And the Hennepin-University Partnership is a great example of that because here we have this ongoing formalized relationship with the largest government in the state of Minnesota. And we work with officials at the county to identify research topics of policy importance that the university is interested in, and that members of the faculty at the University of Minnesota are interested in as well. And so it's making those relationships, it's creating those partnerships that we try to do at Cura and that the Hennepin-University Partnership is doing as well. As the land-grant institution for the state of Minnesota, there's a certain obligation for the university to be doing research that informs local policy making, that provides insights into the issues that face the citizens of Minnesota. And so creating connections with important institutions like Hennepin County is something that the university needs to do, and HUP is a great example of that. And so I think being able to learn from county officials what types of things they need information on, what types of research they would like to see happen to inform their practices, allows researchers at the University of Minnesota who want to do that type of research to do the most impactful research of that type. I think the Hennepin-University Partnership affects students in a number of different ways and in a number of different roles. They can either work as research associates on the research that's being done by faculty. They can also work with the county through their coursework. A number of courses, a number of faculty members at the University of Minnesota have incorporated county projects in their coursework. And so students have worked on those projects through that. For students, it's wonderful because their coursework becomes actual real-life projects for a real-world client. And that's the kind of connection and relevance that a lot of students really value. Well, this region is building a transitway system with multiple light rail lines, bus rapid transit, heavy rail as well. And there were a number of local governments, Hennepin County being chief among them, who were interested in exploring and knowing better about what the impacts of this investment would be, because we're talking millions and millions of dollars of public sector investment. And so at the same time, there were faculty members at the university who were interested in the impacts of transitways as well. And so this was one of those situations where the interests of both groups aligned rather perfectly, and both Hennepin County officials and researchers at the university really wanted the same thing. They wanted to know what was going to be the impact of this massive investment that the region is in the middle of making. And so we began to meet fairly regularly. We broadened our scope to other researchers who were interested, perhaps not directly on the transit part of it, but on perhaps the economic development aspects of transitway investment. This group met for months and months, looked at what existing research said. They explored different research questions that might be pursued, and as a result of that work, they have generated a research agenda and have produced a number of very important research reports that have been instrumental in making other decisions on transitway investments. I was there at the beginning when we did have these conversations about what are the possible set of research questions that might be addressed. The group went through and prioritized those. We actually funded here at Kira and through the Transitway Impact Program a review of the literature to see which questions had been adequately answered by other researchers or which research was more or even less transferable to this location. And then we sat and we had conversations about, given that prioritization of questions, what is it that we should do and how should we allocate resources for specific research projects here in the Twin Cities. And then once there was a very short list of priorities, we tried to find the exact researchers who could and would be able to do the work. A number of local governments were interested in seeing this happen. Hennepin County was probably the most anxious to see it happen, and therefore they made a generous contribution of seed funding to the Transitway Impact Research Program and really helped get it off the ground. It just so happened that one of the first research projects identified as important was one that answered the question of whether the light rail transit would have a positive impact on local residential property values. And at the time, we had no one else to do that study, so I did that study. And I will say that of all the work that I've done in my career, that one study has generated more interest in the community than anything else. So I was asked to give summaries of the findings before a number of different policymaking bodies. The media were all over this. The media were very interested in this topic and in our findings. And so, and I've seen public officials repeat the findings at public hearings all of the time, identifying exactly the kind of spillover positive impacts of the transitway research. So I've seen it firsthand how research that we do at the university can be widely disseminated, widely talked about, and widely used in the public sector. Having the county as an active partner in this is invaluable. They provide a number of things in this equation. They obviously access to data, but also an important grounding for the researcher. We may have a set of theoretical interests, and we may have a set of interests that we identify from a review of the literature, but the officials from the county make sure that the interests of those who actually implement the program are represented in the work that we do. And so it's a very important grounding for the kind of research that we do and for identifying the specific research questions that we pursue. So we've had this long-standing partnership with Hennepin County. This was a unique partnership in the country. We don't know of any other university that has this type of formalized relationship. And to have it go on for 10 years has been very important because I think we've been able to refine our partnership over time. I think that expectations on both sides are a lot more realistic now than they used to be. The university tends to operate on a slightly different calendar than do public officials, and that took some time for both parties to get used to. I think that the decision-making process in the county is different than it is at the university. I think that took some time for both parties to get used to, but there's a much greater sense of ease between the two parties, between the two partners, than there was when we began. We didn't really know if this would work in the beginning. I think we found that it has worked, and I think that it's produced value to both entities, and so I think we're anxious to move forward.